Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to another video, and today I want to talk about some problems that Delta Force have at the moment, and in particular, one huge one, which for me is skill-based matchmaking. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this from other games such as Call of Duty, and this exists in Delta Force. I originally only assumed that it was in the ranked mode, which kind of makes sense because that is, after all, a ranked mode, but it now turns out it's also in the unranked mode. So let's delve a little bit into this subject, why it's bad for the game, and they really need to remove this, at least in the unranked mode. As always guys, don't forget to hit that sub button if you do enjoy the content here on the channel. There's going to be a lot more coming on Delta Force from me in the future, as well as the Battlefield series, so if that's something that interests you, make sure you are subbed up for that. So what is skill-based matchmaking? Skill-based matchmaking is quite literally what it says on the tin. It's a matchmaking system, and it sorts you into various lobbies when you queue up in the game based on your skill. So it's going to base it on your KD, your accuracy, your win percentage, etc, etc. And the goal of the skill-based matchmaking system is really to make sure that you have around a 1 KD all the time. So if your KD starts to creep above a 1, it's going to start queuing you up against players that are better than you until it brings it back down again. If your KD starts to drop, it's going to start queuing you up against easier players. Now, why is this bad for the game? Well, to me, it's essentially like playing against a bunch of clones of yourself. This is really what the system wants. It wants 31 clones of you on your team and 32 clones of you on the enemy team. And if you look at it that way, every single gunfight you have against a one-to-one clone of yourself gives you around a 50% chance of winning, right? 1 out of every 2 gunfights you're going to win, and the other one, the clone, is going to win. That's pretty much what the skill-based matchmaking system wants to do, or get as close to it there as possible. And what that means for you, the player, is that you're going to be having to sweat your ass off every single round. No matter how well you do, no matter how much you improve at the game, you never see those improvements in statistics like your KD going up or your score going up, because you're always bumped up to the next skill level and then you're pitted against players who are progressively better. And there are also other obvious downsides to this as well. You could end up with a worse ping. Whenever I matchmake, it usually only takes 5 seconds or so for the matchmaking system to inform me that it's widening the search criteria. And this is most likely because it can't find an equal skill match within the criteria that it's looking in, and so it widens them and usually ends up queuing me into servers in the US, which have much worse pings for me. Skill-based matchmaking has been such a controversial topic. It's one of the reasons I never play Call of Duty games, and I just don't enjoy them. And in fact, this was the main selling point of X-Defiant. Well, you know, haha, look how that game turned out, right? But basically, that was sort of coined as Call of Duty without the skill-based matchmaking, and that's why a lot of people like that game and gravitated towards it. And one of the best things about Battlefield has always been that there was no skill-based matchmaking in there. And this is another large reason that players want server browsers to come back, because then you can be sure that there is no skill-based matchmaking going on behind the scenes. Now, I think SBMM makes sense in ranked modes. Maybe not necessarily the ranked mode of Delta Force, but I get it. Let's take, for example, Overwatch, where you're playing against 6 enemy players, you've got another 5 on your team. Skill-based matchmaking makes sense there because you are trying to climb the ranks, and rank is really unimportant if there isn't a certain level of skill hidden behind those ranks. So that completely makes sense. But Delta Force isn't a competitive game like Overwatch or like League or something like that. It's a casual arcadey shooter just like Battlefield. And in my opinion, skill-based matchmaking just really has no place in a game like this. Now, there is a counter-argument that some people will use against skill-based matchmaking, and it's this. Basically, anybody who is in the upper half of the skill bracket and is generally better at the game, people say they generally don't want skill-based matchmaking because then they get matched up against worse players and they can farm more kills and etc. The other half of the people, they maybe don't have quite as much time to play the game, they tend to often favour skill-based matchmaking because they don't want to be matched up against players who are vastly superior to their own skill and get farmed by them constantly. But it's really not going to make it any better for them, in my opinion, because if you're going to be matched up with players of equal skill to you, well, then you're still going to be going up against people who are just as good as you are, and you're going to be dying half of the time there as well. The way I think both Battlefield and Delta Force should tackle this is they should just matchmake into a server with 64 players or however many players the game tends to have, and then they should split the teams based on skill. So for argument's sake here, let's say we matchmake into a server, we've got 20 or so players who are pretty good at the game, you've got 20 or so who are intermediate, and then you have 20 or so who are beginners and they're not very good at the game. Maybe they've got like, you know, a 0.3 KD or something like that. Of course, we don't want all of the good players on one team and all of the bad players on the other team, because that's going to result in a massive steamroll. So then, yes, I think they should sort those players accordingly into teams, as long as you're not queued up with anybody in a squad and they're all just solo queuing players, so that there is an equal amount of good, medium, and bad players on each team, if that makes sense. And that way, you're going to get a vast array of opponents throughout the game. Sometimes, yes, you are going to run into somebody who absolutely farms the crap out of you, but guess what? Sometimes you're also going to run into somebody who's objectively worse than you, and you have a better chance of winning that gunfight against them. And it just adds variety to the game. If we only have skill-based matchmaking all the time, and you're playing against somebody who's just like you all the time, it just gets boring, sweaty, and honestly unfulfilling. You can't even see yourself getting better at the game. And quite frankly, I know a lot of people are going to dislike me for saying this, but if you are somebody out there who is right at the bottom of the skill level of games like Delta Force and Battlefield, and you just want to have a casual experience, you don't want to be playing against sweaty people all the time, like, maybe just play another game, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Delta Force and Battlefield, they're not the most competitive multiplayer games out there, but at the end of the day, you're still playing a shooter against other humans, and there is a competitive nature to that. It is going to result in you getting killed by people who are better than you sometimes. And these days, I really feel like developers are going out of their way to increase player engagement by putting all of these skill-based matchmaking systems in these games, and it's really losing a lot of its soul and what really makes playing with and against other humans online fun. And believe me, I understand, I'm a dad, I've got a very busy life, I don't have as many times to dedicate to gaming as I used to, and after I've been sat down playing Battlefield or Delta Force for like 2 or 3 hours, you know, I've got to take a break because I have been tryharding a little bit, right? I have been focusing so hard on the game that I just have to step away from the PC, and if I want to continue gaming, I'll go and play a single player game or something a little bit more chill. Like I say, playing against other players is always inherently going to have a competitive nature to it. And instead of developers hand-holding these players and saying, oh, you know what, if you're terrible at the game, it's okay, we're just going to pit you against players who are also terrible at the game, like, suck it up, Buttercup. You know, just get better at the game. Like, if you want to play this kind of game, the enjoyment that at least I derive from it is actually seeing my own skill improve, learning the maps, learning the weapons, what are the best attachments. Some of the stuff I put out on guides here on the channel is all about that, by the way, so make sure you are subscribed. And if you're not that kind of player, if you don't care to get better in a game like Delta Force or like Battlefield, and you just want to jump in and have some silly fun, well, then you have to be prepared that you are going to die a lot, and you can't get annoyed about that if you don't put any time and effort into actually improving at the game. And if that's a deal breaker, then maybe these kind of competitive games just aren't for you. And God knows there are plenty of single player shooters out there where you can have a much more casual experience. So that's my take on it, guys. Maybe it's a controversial one, maybe it isn't, I don't really know. Let me know what you think about this down below. But otherwise, thank you guys, as always, so much for watching the video. Don't forget to check out these videos, by the way. I've already got a gunsmith guide up online which goes over all of the stats in the game, how you can reduce some of the dreaded visual recoil that exists in this game, how you should be thinking about kitting out your weapons, and I'm also going to be doing another guide on some of my favourite guns along with loadouts for them. So make sure, once again, you are subbed if you don't want to miss that. Good luck out there on the battlefield, guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you all in the next video.